Good morning. Welcome to the September meeting. Can I just remind you that we are being filmed and recorded, and at the last meeting I had a couple of people approach me about members doing their emails because the cameras are dotted around, so can you just be really careful? Please do not do your emails while we're here. Obviously you will need to access the agendas and the papers, but if you could try not to do your emails, that would be really helpful. If you've got an urgent call or something, can you possibly go out, or if you really need to apply for something? It really doesn't look great if we're doing our emails. Right, apologies for absence. We've got Andrew Bray, Christine Lawrence, Evelyn Stacey, Susan Warren and John Petrinos. I understand Lee and Dominic won't be here for planning later.
Correct. Enjoy
the weather. Declarations of interest. So I have none. Robin?
Yeah, I probably ought to have one. I've been chairing the Farming and Protected Landscapes programme, and I'm also an Exmoor farmer. I haven't benefited from it, I must admit, but that does not say that my son may not apply for something in the future.
Jeremy?
I don't think so, although I am Secretary of the Brendan Commons Council, and they will equally be involved in SFIs.
Bill, any interest?
Yes, only the same as Robin. I am an Exmoor farmer, so I might possibly apply for a bit.
Right.
Lovely.
Theo? Me?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Nick?
No, thank you.
Andy? Francis? Marcus? Stephen?
Yes, item 12.5. I'm the applicant, and as you say, I will not be here for the whole planning meeting today.
Thanks, Laura. Thank you. Announcements. Well, Laura's just spoken. I'd like to welcome Laura Williams. So Laura's our new Secretary of State member. Welcome, Laura. Hope you really enjoy your time with us. And the agenda today is quite useful, I think, for sort of settling in and seeing how we operate. Minutes of the meeting, item 4. So we need to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meetings of the authority on the 4th of July. Could I have a proposal, please? Jeremy Yabsley, seconded Jeremy Holton.
Sorry about that.
It's slightly confusing with you sitting next to each other. Right, so to consider any matters arising from those minutes, and as usual we'll go through them. At page 1, you need to attract my attention. Page 2. Page 3.
Just a question there, and I think long-running planning dispute. Anything updated on that, or are we still putting more money in that direction?
Thank you, Chairman. The property did go to auction, an online auction, but unfortunately it didn't meet its reserve. So, as you know, we have to go back through the courts if we want to ask for the price to be lowered so that we've got a better chance of selling Aldermead. What we're proposing to do in the interim is we've got a meeting planned this week actually with Clark Wilmot, our solicitors, just to explore what other options we've got. So obviously one is to go back through the courts, but are there any other options open to us to ensure that the authority doesn't suffer even more sort of financial strain because of this case?
I think we're all quite concerned about that. Could you update us when you've been solicitors, please? Thank you.
Can I ask a question? It's dreadful. Yeah, absolutely. Is it the court that sets the reserve, or is how does it work?
To be honest, Francis, I don't know the detail of how the reserve is set. I think the problem we have is that when the repossession first took place, the property market was much more buoyant, and there had been an offer of about £1 million for the property. And so I think it was deemed reasonable by everybody that 900,000 was a fair price. And of course it hasn't been lived in for a little while, so it's not looking as good as it did when it was lived in. So, but I'll find out and come back to you.
That's very helpful. You actually don't need to. What I was hoping was that it wasn't the chap who was on the other end
No,
of the
no.
court case who had put the price so high. So.
I think Claire wants to come in.
Claire,
My
could you come
understanding
to a microphone, Claire?
yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. Just to
answer that question from Francis, my understanding is that it is the courts that sets that reserve, which is why we would have to go back to them to change it. So just to answer that for you.
Nick?
On the same subject, really, does that mean that the additional cost that we bear every time we go back to court, etc., is added to what people owe us, if I can put it that way?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Yeah, so
good.
it is. I mean, without going into too much detail, the property has quite a large mortgage on it, and so there's not a huge amount of equity actually left in the property.
Okay, I think we probably need, at the members' forum in October, could you possibly, an update, and some of these questions, which we probably shouldn't be discussing in a public meeting anyway, could you possibly put us all in the picture? Thank you. Right, page 4. Page 5. Page 6.
One question.
Robin?
On the biodiversity net gain, does government's proposals to sort of change their attitude towards the nutrient neutrality rules have any impact on that as well for us?
Claire?
thank you. That's a very good question, Robin, and I can't give you a straight answer to that at the moment, but obviously it's something that
we're looking at, and we're planning to do some further updates for members on the whole biodiversity net gain agenda coming forward. So if we can come back to you on that, that would be great. Thank you. But yes, something that we're very aware of and looking into. To be fair, I think on Exmoor the nutrient neutrality in terms of the zones is only a very, very small part of the national park, so it doesn't really affect our housing delivery, which is the main reason for the government's changes. But there are other issues around sort of air quality, as you're aware, in terms of farming. So that all, is part of the mix.
Thank you. Stephen?
The government's change of policy as far as, say, Somerset is concerned will particularly affect the catchment of the Paris and the Tone. We've only got the tiniest bit of the catchment of the Tone where it rises. So to all intents and purposes, that change in government policy doesn't really affect us. It does our neighbours, but not us.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. And page 12. Thank you. Item 5, public speaking. We've got members of the public coming for the planning items this afternoon. And so now on to item 6, which is the farming protected landscapes. Alex.
Thank you, Chair. The one that says
You press every other button now, let's start from that one.
Thank you, Robin. Morning, everybody. Alex Harris, Conservation Manager. So I'm just going to do a brief update, I think, pretty much to say that farming protected landscapes is nicely on track. It's been going well. It's been successful here, locally and also nationally. Firstly, in that we've spent our money here, every penny of every year, which is great. And nationally, it's spent up pretty well as well, and that's alongside sort of nationally other things like SFI, which really hasn't spent its money. And because of that, DEFRA are really impressed with it as a programme, and it's been rewarded with another year. Not just another year, but they've also bumped the funding up quite a bit, partly because of inflation, running costs and everything else, but also because they've recognised the programme's been going well and they want to support it further. So, roughly speaking, we had on average about 400,000 a year in our initial allocations for the first 3 years. That's now up to 800,000 on average between the final 2 years. So they've boosted this year, year 3, and given us a massive year in year 4. So I put in the paper just to ask you to welcome that additional funding, allow us to to proceed to year 4. As we are at the moment, we're sort of part way through year 3. We've upped our capacity slightly. We did have sort of a job share with one FIPL officer post shared with 2 people doing 3 days a week. We've upped that to 4. We think that sort of meets the demand. 4 days a week for each officer. They've obviously skilled up hugely through this process, and a much better place to deal with applications as they come in. And we've got a very experienced administrator as well. So I think we're in a good place, and we have officers who support the whole process. Various specialists from the access teams, etc., who can help sense check applications when they come in. So that's sort of where we are, sort of broadly. But just to reflect on how it's gone so far, what have we done? Well, again, sort of broadly, we've supported 70 projects in year 1 and 2. That's, I think, for the money, more than average, really. And our projects average at around about 9,000. And so that we have more smaller scale projects, which is not a bad thing. I think spreading the money quite far across the national park. But again, but because it reflects what's come in. The FIPL programme really relies on what people want to apply for. We can support projects, but there are only so many big projects out there. Although there may be more to come, so we'll see how that goes. So just on those projects, I mean they're quite a different range. I put a full list in the addendum there, and try to sort of. Lots of projects have several different outcomes and several different aspects to them, but just broadly speaking, I put in section 7 the types of projects that have been put forward, and over a third of them are field boundary restoration, which is probably unsurprising. But it's not just a given that it's a field boundary restoration, therefore it will happen. It needs to fit the criteria. So they're looked at quite carefully, and they're scrutinised so that they don't sort of overlap with other schemes like countryside stewardship. Usually there's something sort of particular about them, which means FIPL's a good fit. And just to reiterate from talking previously about FIPL is part of the way it works. It's just got a very broad remit. There's lots of ways you can go at it, lots of things you can apply for, and it's less sort of restrictive in its rules than some schemes like CS. It's got less strings attached, but it does generally require quite a lot of support to get applications up and ready. So about over a third a field boundary, and then there's quite a few that are, you know, hedge planting, reinstating hedges, things like that. And then we've just got a right mix. We've got a few that are interesting regenerative farming approaches, and they could be anything from sort of soil inoculation to dealing with, you know, different ways of dealing with manure and some other things that are, you know, that you need to be a farmer really to understand. Or that's from my perspective anyway. Some equipment purchase, again that needs to be equipment that fits with the criteria, so often that's sort of regenerative farming type, so things like direct drills for you know, for be able to drill crops without breaking the ground, also regenerative farming type, and we tend to look more favourably at those later in the year when we're looking at sort of quick turnaround. If we tend to have projects fall away and suddenly have some budget that we need to reallocate. However, people can apply for that any time of the year. So there's been one or two surveys, different things. Brendan Commoners have done a natural capital assessment. That was in the first year, and that's been really useful for looking at the future of that with other potential schemes like landscape recovery. So really good bit of work. Quite low on historic environment features, and I think one of the issues of that is they're quite there's quite a lot of investment in time to get those up and running. Surveys needed, etc. So we're just trying to look at that and see, you know, whether there's, you know, more projects we can get through, more historic environment projects to get through, and what the issues are really. But they're often, we've got one we've been trying to get through for about 3 years now, and it will happen this year. It's been approved, but the various surveys require back surveys at various times of year. It sort of slows it right down. So if we knew FIPL was happening for 4 years at the outset, we probably would need to get historic environment projects through. Also, some of them are very costly. Being put through for sort of whole barn restorations, and you know, want most of that money. And if we don't feel that the public purse can support that, then you know, the applicant may not go through with that. One or two access improvements, sort of permissive paths, that sort of thing. Again, not a huge amount in the scheme of things. So again, there may be more we can do there to encourage access projects when we're out on farm. There's a convenient title of miscellaneous at the bottom, because there's a few that struggle to fit in any particular category, and those include projects that we've put through ourselves and are running ourselves, such as the Sown Seeds project, which has been very successful and has already achieved its targets, and overachieved its targets. So it's been a real success story in benefiting a large number of farms and holdings through meadow restoration. That's just a sort of whistle stop of the type of applications, and just a reminder that, you know, predominantly we're reliant really on what comes in. We can try and support and shape applications, but we don't have the capacity to sort of, you know, go up and proactively target different types of outcomes and sort of create projects ourselves. It really is, you know, what comes in. We're about to do a little bit of a promotional push, because I don't think many people know about the extra year. So we've just been sort of, you know, dealing with our sort of business as usual so far this year, but we're in a good place to sort of start pushing for that third year now and get that momentum moving. and we're fairly confident that there's plenty in the pipeline for this year. There's one sort of change that DEFRA have proposed making to our to the sort of procedures. So it's sort of we see it as our money, FIPL, but it's under DEFRA rules, and they've just tweaked one of the rules around the local assessment panel. Currently, we as officers can approve projects up to 5,000, as long as we're confident that they hit the criteria, and we've got an assessment process to do that. And anything above that goes to the panel. So DEFRA raised the threshold to 10,000, and that would, on sort of previous experience, cut out quite a lot of the projects going to panel. So we've spoken to the panel, and I think that by and large they're happy with that, but they would like sight. So basically a list of what would go to them, and they would have a chance to call things in if they felt they would felt they'd like to see things. So that would be a change that that you would need to approve today to allow that threshold to go up to 10. But at the system that we've agreed with the panel, if you were to approve that, was for it to be on a discretionary basis. So I think that's about everything. The only one last thing is we've got one vacancy of our authority members on the panel since Linda has left. So we would very much like to fill that again with another experienced member from authority. And I believe there's some selection later on this morning. So if that's okay, I think that's pretty much everything. Just a whistle-stop sort of roundup.
Thank you, Alex. Questions from members? Mike?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and congratulations to Alex and all those involved. It's a success story, which is really good news, so thank you. Is it saying anything to the Exmoor Park Authority in terms of comparison with other national park take-up? In other words, is our take-up better than other national parks? And in terms of the range of projects, the outcomes, is it very different from any other national park?
Can I add to that? Because this happens in the AOMBs as well, and clearly we're bordered by AOMBs. I'd be interested to know if their projects are similar to ours, or there's a marked difference.
I can only sort of answer that loosely, anecdotally really. I think we tend to they tend to have bigger projects that are a bit more conceptual, I think, as far as I'm aware. We tend to be quite tight on our criteria, I think, and very much focused on action on the ground, physical delivery, whereas some of them tend to be, I think they tend to feel they've got a lot of money to spend, and how are we going to spend this? So they there are some projects like what are they called now? It will come to me in a second. But it's about sort of grass-fed produce, and it's all a bit woolly, and a lot of them are signed up to that, and it's paying for membership of that, and we're sort of looking at it and thinking, are there actual benefits to this? I can't remember the name of that organisation. It will come to me in a second. So I just think we're a bit sharper and we're a bit more focused.
So we're looking at tangible outcomes, perhaps, compared to other.
I think so.
Conceptual projects.
Yeah, I think others are sort of
a good thing.
I think they've sort of been a bit looser with their criteria. I don't want to say that it's been a bit freer and easier with their money, but I think we've been quite focused on it. We've definitely spent all our money. Some haven't. The first year we asked for a bit more as well, some underspend. We didn't do that in the second year because we ourselves suddenly had a couple of large projects fall away, and we were at risk of having underspend ourselves, so we weren't in a position to bid for more. But I think it's reflected in the amount we've got in the fourth year. It's quite a bit more, so DEFRA recognise that we can spend it.
Fran?
Thank you. It's really interesting, the different projects that are going ahead. I just was wondering, is it possible to see which projects are attached to which farm, etc., for the whole list? Is that produced when, I mean, do you have minutes when you have the FIPL meetings? Probably it's something I've missed if it was circulated to members, but it would be quite interesting to see the spread, because I was just wondering, when you mention there's an inn, the Exmoor Inn, I mean, what did that have that was relevant to FIPL? I was just interested to have each one, if you could do an extra column and just say what they actually use their funding for, I think it would be quite helpful. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. Okay, I can do that. We also have it sort of set out spatially, so we've got all the data. I mean, primarily in case somebody walks in the door wanting an audit, and we can pinpoint exactly where every pound has been spent across the national park. But we can very easily just add a bit more detail. I didn't want to sort of swamp you with information, but certainly. And in the case of Exmoor Forest Farms, it's to do with retail of meat produced on farm. We don't have many of those, and they're quite good to have that sort of local connection of local food. We've had others try and do something similar, but without being able to demonstrate that they're doing something on farm that's environmentally beneficial, but they could.
Thank you.
Before I ask Dominic, you mentioned the word audit. That's the word I'd written down. Who audits all this?
Well, I mean, the RPA could audit it. So, previous projects we've been audited before from DEFRA money. So, there's not been a problem because we've just been able to show them, transparent and clear track record. But RPA can always audit. They may not do, but it's always a possibility. So you always want to be ready.
Dominic.
Thank you. So speaking as a member of the FIPL panel, along with Robin, Susan as well, she's not here today, and then we've got one vacancy, and then we have some other panel members from Exmoor Hill Farming Network and a few other places that are listed on the notes there. First, actually, I want to pick up on the AOMB because I'm also the member that attends the AOMB partnership meetings for North Devon AOMB. So I do get the reports that are involved in what they've been doing there. So it is actually interesting. They obviously have a smaller grant than we do, about 176,000 I think in the last year, and they put a lot more into access than we've done. So they've done installing kissing gates and new signage to improve access and understanding of Braunton boroughs. They've done a lot more explanatory signage. They're into that sort of thing. They've done a lot more orchards created, 3 of those. They've done more habitat creation, a lot of stuff to do with water quality and things like that. And now what's interesting about AOMB is they've done it in a slightly different way, where they do farm reports for people. So for instance, they've done one for my farm, because part of my farm is outside the national park and is in the AOMB. So they came along and did basically a farm report, which is really helpful. Now, we haven't got to that stage yet, and I'm not sure we've got the resources to do it. They're doing it differently, I think, because they're doing it with the Biosphere project, aren't they? So they've got that overlap there, which probably helps them with that. But there's definitely, I think we could be doing more, actually, to share a bit of learning with what the AOMB is doing. And it is worth, and I'm happy to forward their report, actually, if you like, if anyone's interested, because, anybody can see it, and it's quite nicely done, and maybe that will be worth for comparison. I think first thing to say is that Sarah and Charlotte, who are the 2 officers that go out and do the actual interaction with the farmers, which is really important. Again, it's like we can't really go out and just talk to every landowner in Exmoor and say, hey, here's FIPL, do you want to get involved and what do you want to do? But Sarah and Charlotte do a really good job of doing outreach and actually also helping the applicant develop their applications a little bit better, so that we're not getting stuff to the panel which we look at and go, oh, for heaven's sake, we're not going to fund this. So that, we find, has been really helpful. We are encountering more and more overlaps with other forms of funding, and I think this is going to become a bigger issue in the coming year. So that means for the Countryside Stewardship Scheme and how they're changing how capital grants are done, the Sustainable Farming Initiative, SFI, which is not so much about capital, but may become about capital. But there are aspects of SFI, for instance, around hedgerow management, which are regular revenue payments for managing your hedges. So imagine if you hadn't applied for that, and then you came to SFI and said, or if you came to FIPL rather, and said, oh, can you now give me £20,000 to basically do all the work on my hedges that I didn't claim for the last 3 years because I didn't get my act together. And we're going to see a lot more of that. And the last meeting, we had a few of these, where we were going, well, hang on a minute, why would FIPL pay for this? The other issue is, if you look at the list of what we've got here, there's a lot of fencing in there. FIPL, from our budget, we've spent an awful lot on wire and posts in the last year. And again, fencing's really important. Boundary protection to protect features for biodiversity and everything is really important, to keep stock where you want the stock to be. It's part of the regenerative farming offer as well, in terms of how that's going to work. So it's important, but we also have to continually ask ourselves questions, is this what FIPL was for, when there are other funding arrangements that actually pay for that? So that's something I think we're going to have to do a lot more work on. The other issues are we taking a holistic view? FIPL, farming in protected landscapes. I've always seen that as, how do we help farmers transition to changing farming in protected landscapes? That's a different kind of construction on it. But actually, in here we've said that FIPL was about the transition to the new ELMS, as they were calling it then, which is going to be the new funding regime, as basically the old basic payment system was abolished. So it was always about that idea of a transition. But we don't really, and this is DEFRA, this is a problem in the design, it's not our fault, this is because DEFRA haven't really understood or explained what they mean by transition. What do we actually mean by what farming in protected landscapes needs to look like? Well, the problem is nobody can tell us. So are we supposed to come up with that? Or maybe it is. Now, of course, we do have something that can help us with that, which is our nature recovery vision. So, and the disappointment for me for the nature recovery vision is that we had that a couple of years ago. We had quite a lot of discussion about it. We had some pushback. We had to do some work with some of the farming community in order to help them understand what that was about. But what have we actually done with it? And the problem is now what we're not yet doing is linking that nature recovery vision to the farming and protected landscapes, which is where we actually have money to spend, where we could, of course, be indicating our preferences for nature recovery through the way we allocate grants. We don't really yet do that. And one of the issues is, and Robin will laugh because we had a discussion in the last panel meeting which consisted of me, Robin, and one of the other farmers having a rather silly angels on the head of a pin discussion about basically whether a 100-metre stretch of hedgerow should have how many standard trees in it. We had 3 different views about this, and all of which were completely valid. And it was a very good-natured discussion, and we could probably go on for 4 hours if it wasn't the other panel members intervening and telling us to shut up. But what it led me to believe was, of course, is that we have expertise, within the National Park officers, within Rob's team, within Alex's team, in order to actually give us really good guidance on this. And we haven't yet done that. And to give guidance in a way that actually is consistent with that nature recovery vision. We haven't done that. So at the moment, and this is the way, no criticism of how we're doing FIPL, by the way, the way FIPL was bounced, as Alex said, just suddenly appeared from nowhere, and we had to scramble a panel together, and the first year we had a ridiculously short amount of time to actually spend the money. We haven't really ever had a chance to actually sit back and go, right, what really could we be doing with this? And I think now, as Alex has said, is a really good chance for us to start doing that. Anyway, I think that's probably quite a lot of material to cover, but hopefully that helps give you some context.
I think that's really helpful, thank you. Laura, you're at the bottom of my list, I'm afraid. And the list is quite long, just to warn you, and Luli, you're even further down. Robin.
I'll let other members go first, and I'll...
All right, okay, well, the next person on the list was Jeremy Yapsley.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Dominic. You've raised a lot of really pertinent points there, which detract a bit from what I was going to say, but not in a negative way at all. I thoroughly agree with you. I was just going back to comparison with other national parks, and it would appear that the way we do things would be a very good demonstration of value for money, and evidence of. And I was just hoping that we were going to capture that. And when we're under pressure, as we're always under pressure, just use it to show that we're actually doing things in a very cost-effective and value for money way. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy Horton.
Thank you. My point is, just for the benefit of perhaps new members and also members of the public listening to this debate, do we actually have a list of acronyms that people can understand what we're talking about? Because we're talking in code today, and I mean, it's my world, I understand it, but there must be many people who don't. I'm just wondering whether it would be a good idea to have a list of acronyms, not only for this side of things, but for planning and what have you, as a guidance note for people trying to decipher our minutes or listen to our conversation today.
So if you look at the report, every time an acronym is used, there it is, the first time it's used, it's definitely there. So FIPL is described in instruction background 1.1. It says farming protected landscapes, and I do check, Judy, I do check when I read these reports to make sure that it is there. Could we do a list? I suppose so, but I'll leave it to Judy and I'll have a discussion about that when she comes back from leave, about whether that's practical, because where would you keep it and how would you refer to it? I don't want to make us sound even more official by saying refer to, page 7 of our acronym manual. It sounds a bit daft, but in the report, definitely, I can reassure you, I do check, because quite often I sit there and I think, I've no idea what she's talking about. Especially if it's something to do with some obscure part of farming, as Robin well knows, because I have before now sent him a text of what is this about. So, yeah, it is there. Judy and I will have a chat, see if we can come up with something. I'm afraid that every world has them, doesn't it, acronyms? Right, next person on the list, Mandy.
Thank you. I'm someone that doesn't know all the acronyms, and there were lots in the last speaker, actually, that I didn't know what they all were, so someone at the table that doesn't know it either, so just to let everybody know. Couple of things. Firstly, I've been sitting looking at the pictures above your head here, and it'd be really lovely with this money to have some pictures and examples, perhaps to bring it alive for the public. It's something we do really well at the park, and for me it'd be really nice, I think for the funders as well, to have something pictorial to go back to say, this is what we've done, here are some pictures, and I think especially with those smaller projects, that can really have a great outcome, even though it's a relatively small amount of money. So I think that would be really good for the funders and for the public. I was really surprised there wasn't more education work within that funding, in that for me that's where the legacy is, and we're putting in a lot of sort of infrastructure, but for me it's also about legacy and how you add value in future years. So I was surprised there wasn't more of an educational element within it. The next question it's really difficult with this funding when it's going up and down, and the amounts are varying so much. So connected to that is, have we got a list of small projects sort of in the wings waiting, so that if we get towards the end of the year, there's some very quick ones that you can roll out, perhaps on your last meeting of the year. Can monies be held over in the event that you don't spend it? And in that regard, I'm thinking about if you've got a larger project, often that will need to span several years. So is there the ability within the funding to do that? Around the question earlier about grants and that crossover, I think it's really useful within all grant applications to actually say, is there another source of grants you could have applied to? Have you applied to it? And I think that's a really helpful question to put in all sort of grant funding, and I've seen it sort of used quite a lot. So just a suggestion, it might help deal with that issue you were touching on there. Thank you.
Thanks, Mandy. Alex?
Yeah, I can get back to you on those. I mean, education, we do have some with farm visits, and there's quite a few, as in, educational farm visits. Perhaps I haven't quite pulled that out. Plus, there's quite a bit of some of the projects do, peer-to-peer sort of learning and that sort of promotion. Graze the Moor, for example, which is a multi-year project, is doing that in October, sorry. This is small projects. We do have a pipeline that we run basically everything that comes in, and then we kind of some of those don't fall away, and some of them, through discussion, they want to take on. We've had over 200 inquiries so far. So about 70 became applications last year, in the last 2 years, and then around about, I think, 13 or so were either refused or withdrawn because they didn't really meet the criteria. So, there's still quite a few inquiries there that that we're developing, and we call that our pipeline. Some of them take quite a long time. People their interest takes a while to sort of come back after they first understand a bit more about it. But that's what the officers are there to do. And we try to commit the money ahead of the last 3 months really. But we tend to sort of have some other some projects in the pipeline, and particularly their equipment purchases that we can turn around quite quickly, whatever the weather. So we've done that a couple of times really. So I think we've managed to manage the money, and it has to be spent. That allocation has to be spent in year. There's no rollover of that. But some projects are allowed money from different years. So we call them multi-year projects, which we won't have those in year 4. I mean, anyone starting year 4 have to finish in year 4, unless unless something changes. I'm not assuming that there will be another, a 5th year. I think we've just got to, use the criteria we've got. We've got a number of multi-year projects, and they've worked fairly well. So the grant crossover, that's very much part of what they try and advise on, and it's been quite a learning curve. And my officers have come back to me and said, we need to know more about this. And we've looked into it ourselves, and we've realised that everyone's on that learning curve. There's no sort of one-stop shop really to know exactly, to get the full lowdown of the evolving ELM, or environmental land management, which is the collective term for all these different agro-environment schemes. So they're doing a really good job being sort of in the front line and making sure that we get the most out of FIPL by not awarding it to projects where they could easily access, something like countryside stewardship. And we've got good examples of where we've done that. We've done some of the project through FIPL, and then we've encouraged them to access countryside stewardship where they haven't done before. And one of the successes we feel that we've hit upon through FIPL is sort of empowering some farmers who haven't felt they've had the time or the expertise to do their own applications. FIPL's the first step, and they've been really proud of that, being able to do it themselves. And otherwise they'd always go to their land agent, and that kind of FIPL's outside of land agent criteria generally, sort of territory, because I don't think there's quite enough resource in there to warrant farmers paying for their time, etc. So it's been very good on that sort of self-help and confidence basis.
Thank you. I just still ask the question up front, because even if they haven't, it will give them another source that they can go to and look at. So I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. Thank you. Laura. Thank you, Andrea. There's been some really good points raised, lots that have touched upon what I wanted to add. So the FIPL officers, we've obviously got double the amount of funding to give out and not a proportional amount of their time. Is their main focus on supporting the applicants and the processing of the applications, and where does the reporting and the outreach sit? Because I think coming from a comms background, there's some great stories in here that could be shared to inspire others to sort of tackle that acronym question, so people know what FIPL means, because they're learning about what it actually means on the ground and what we're doing with it and stuff. So I think that, you mentioned it, that outreach piece, those farm reports, what does it look like on your farm? And there's a big there's a campaign to be had here that isn't being led by DEFRA, that could be led locally to help bring that to life and make sure that we're
sort of reaching everyone who could be reached. So, for example, you know, some of the reporting is there figures as to what percentage of farmed land in Exmoor has benefited from this scheme. There's those sort of questions to ask that could really help elevate it in everyone's minds. So, yeah.
Really useful. Alex?
Yeah, so we've, last year, so I'll tell a story really, last year we reduced the capacity of our administrator because we found that we were up and running, we didn't need a full-time member of staff on that, and there are other opportunities for that member of staff. So we're thinking we're winding the project down. We didn't need more projects, much more promotion. Yes, we want to be able to tell the story, but we sort of reduced that capacity. But we've now put it back up to full time. We've got a very experienced FIFL administrator from another protected landscape who's come in, and that sort of telling the story really, and now which was very much part of that role, we're really quite excited about that. So was there another part of it? Part of the question there was, I think. I noted that.
It was just about the Inspire piece, sharing these stories to Inspire, touching on what Matthew said about the focus and stuff. I think that's where we can really help this scheme thrive here in Exmoor, and get people knowing what it is and the opportunities there.
Thank you. Yeah.
Which probably doesn't fit with your department necessarily.
Well, we all work closely together. We've got a communications officer as well. Who really, he's also very experienced, particularly on social media and that sort of thing, and she'll bring more to that as well. But we're very, we're in a really good place to sort of just really push it in lots of different ways, saying what we've done, and also, what the potential is.
Great. Next on my list is Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much. Alex, thanks ever so much for a great presentation. I think you set us a spot the deliberate mistake, though, because on the FIFL spreadsheet, I see that we've got year 1, 226 and year 2, 410, and the total doesn't agree to the third column, 662. I think it's the farms on the first page. I think it's Wood Advent, I think is one of them. Exmoor Forestry in Simmersbath and Langridge Mills, where they've been allocated funding, but you've not split it across a couple of years, so I don't think that figure's followed down to the bottom figures, which leaves a 25,000 deficit. My learned colleague here, Fran Smith, has pointed out it's 25,000, which would then make the figures agree. So I applaud you for spot the deliberate mistake, members, today. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll take a look at that.
Thank you, Lee. Robin? Oh, Marcus, go on. Sorry, I missed you, Marcus.
Thank you. So, no, only just put my hand up. I mean, this actually follows on from what was said earlier. Talking about looking at some of the figures at the lower end, and there's a couple of not particularly high grants here. Were they sort of part funding, or was it a case that actually maybe not enough people know about it, where they can maybe apply for a small amount? Because I wonder how much effort goes into those small amounts. So although we've got, there's obviously no minimum grant level. Do we think there should be, or do we actually think that it could be a few £100 to somebody could make an awful lot of difference? But could there possibly be, and goes back to what Laura said about, could there possibly be a lot more smaller applications? But then actually, do we want them? I mean, the cost of everything at the moment. I mean, I think about bills at Tesco bigger than some of that recently, and I wonder how that is affecting the grant situation. And actually, that £10,000 that £10,000 going up from 5,000 to 10,000. The way things are going, I'm going to be sat here next year saying it needs to be £15,000 because you can't get anything done for less than X amount. It's quite scary out there now, and with the cost of that, and are those because of the general cost of living stuff? Does that mean we should actually be looking at getting more? Should we sort of be expecting more in, or even encouraging more in, where times are particularly tight? That's a question.
We have got a minimum, which is £250, which I didn't think we'd get anywhere near, but we did have one very last minute. It was a very late on, literally in the last month or so of year one, and it's a small investment we could fund at 100% with very little fuss. So we thought, why not? And I think probably most people won't really take the trouble to apply for anything that's under 2,000 or 3,000, because it's just not worth the trouble. But we'll look at it if it's worth doing. And yeah, costs are going up, and that's definitely part of the reason why we've got more money now in that allocation, and why the threshold has been asked to be put up as well. Part of that reason.
Thank you. Robin.
Right. I've been scribbling some notes as we go through this, actually. Just thought useful to start with, just to remind members that FIPL arrived out of seemingly nowhere from DEFRA due to them finding some money hidden behind the sofa in Curzon Street, having done the reductions in BPS, it would appear, and following quite substantial representation from National Park, suggesting that our static, or as it's been prior to that, reduced National Park grant was causing some serious constraints in us delivering against National Park purposes. And that funding suddenly appeared. It gave a heck of a challenge, to be fair to Alex and the team in the first year, especially with the really short deadline that they gave people, and incredibly fuzzy guidelines to start with as to what it should be for and why and what they expected of it, really. There was an initial feeling of, here's a chunk of money, spend it, make sure you've done it properly, and then we'll try and dream up how exactly we want it to have a legacy value afterwards. So that's kind of the background. As it turned out, National Parks proved to be incredibly good, especially ourselves, at delivering that. My thought as chair, right from the beginning, was whatever we do, make sure we overspend. Let's make sure that there is no money left over, and that proved really important in the first year, because it meant following that we ended up with a little bit extra because other people weren't quite as fast at spending money. I think that's kind of the background behind it, and what it was for is being developed as it's gone forward. And for an awful lot of that, I've got to thank the project officers that have pulled the grants together. And what it's highlighted is that absolute importance with any of this stuff of having project officers. They are funded primarily out of the scheme money that was there. DEFRA gave us a specific percentage, I believe it was up to 15%, wasn't it, Alex, that we were allowed to use out of our allocation to fund the project. I think it was around there, I can't remember, I might be wrong, but put me right if I'm wrong, Rob. I can't remember. I think it was around that sort of percentage, maybe a bit more. But it highlighted the value of having dedicated project officers that have worked on the ground with people to pull together really, really good applications. So that's a bit of a lesson for the future if we want to do any of this stuff, really, that we need that direct contact and we need help to give people help. As regards to the grant crossover, well, if DEFRA had managed to develop in the timescale they promised tenable schemes, then I think it would have been easier to determine where the grant crossover. As it was, even DEFRA's SFI 23 is hiding under the table at the moment, as of last week, and their computer system has got itself into a muddle and a half and seems unable to deliver very much at all. Hopefully that'll change, but that actually has meant in a lot of cases FIPL has stepped in and filled that gap for people wanting to do good projects. Hopefully as we go forward, and the panel have been really keen on making sure, looking at projects, could this be funded somewhere else? And if it has been able, we've asked project officers to go back and liaise with those applicants to say, if you can do that, let's make sure it works. I would agree with the media cell. I saw there's some comms out this week, isn't there, already? I've seen on, is it Facebook, something like that, around the FIPL scheme there. And I think that's really important. I think we could do a lot more with it on some of the projects. And that links very much to that legacy value that's been talked about. I've been really keen, and it's not been written in our FIPL requirements, having to prove a legacy, has it? But I've been really keen all the way through, as with those other members of the panel, that we really need to be able to use this as a learning experience. And there's an awful lot of this stuff which is quite innovative and groundbreaking, such as, for example, the Grazing Moor project, some of that regenerative grazing work that's going on, some of the wood pasture type approaches, some really good stuff. But we need to see some ongoing reports from that so that we as a National Park Authority can benefit from the investment we put in. So there's a challenge for us, I think, and I think there's got to be ways it can be written in as part of that funding package. Looking through, I think just to bear in mind for members, looking at what you've got here, this is not effectively the value of the projects out there. An awful lot, there's an intervention rate this is at, it's the money that we've allocated. And in an awful lot of cases, it could be anywhere between, I think, 10% up to 100%. So in an awful lot of cases, you probably have doubled the investment value here into what's been going on by using FIPL, which is a real bonus. You know, don't forget, FIPL as a percentage of our National Park grant is huge, the opportunity it gives us to invest. Broad spread of stuff, and I think the spread is phenomenal, quite honestly. Still opportunity for more. There's also been a feeling within the panel, the discussion, all the way through, in that they really like the idea of spreading the money as far as possible. Not just limiting to a one nice big laudable project at a time, but that opportunity. And I think you'll find, and I'm going to have a look round as part of the UK National Parks meeting. I'm deputising for Andrea in a fortnight's time in the Lake District, and we're going specifically to look at Lake District FIPL projects. I do know countrywide, talking to farmers, that not all places are as comfortable with the approach taken as I gather most of those people on Exmoor are. An awful lot of the money elsewhere has often gone to very big national park based projects, which I think has caused a little consternation within the local economy and the local population. I think we've managed to avoid that so far, and I think it's really important that we keep that up and we gain a dual benefit, one for ourselves as a national park and one for those people that are engaging with us. Comment was made around the access. My comment, it's a real challenge around the access one in improving it, because just look at our figures for access on our rights of way. We are pretty good at that. It's really difficult to show improvement, but there are cases where there's opportunity. But I think we've got to sell it properly and prove its value. Around the sort of the broader, the legacy stuff as well as the reporting, the Grazing Moor project, which is that multi-annual project that Alex referred to, is having an open day in October. We've got government staff, I know there's government staff, ministers, whatever, have all been invited, the Natural England, the varying agencies, an awful lot of interest in that approach, especially bearing in mind the challenges that are going on with triple SIs and moorland grazing and future agreements and so on in other areas. And future FIPL, I just wanted to comment on that. It is only for one more year, but I am cautiously optimistic that due to the success, and as long as we can prove our level of success and spend on that, my own feeling was I would be cautiously optimistic that we can convince DEFRA that this could be an ongoing approach. And there's a feeling if we work it right, it may be an easier approach than trying to convince them we just need more core funding to provide this type of funding that gives a definitive purpose and return. So a challenge for us on both sides, but a lot of opportunities. And that's more than enough from me, and thank you very much. It's been quite a pleasure chairing the panel, although a challenge at times.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you for chairing the panel. So if we can go to what we've been asked to... Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
Francis.
Bit late coming in. Just briefly, because as we all know, it's not my subject. But I absolutely, what Robin said about the value of project officers, absolutely, and as the way to go. As proportion of funding available to us to influence what happens. Now, I mean, in many local authorities, one-off grants year to year are 50% or more of their actual funding. It's the way things happen, and it does give, while it's incredibly hard on the nerves, it gives quite a lot of flexibility, particularly to do the kind of partnership work, which again, Robin touched on, maybe hasn't been felt in other parts, but is clearly here, which is great. And the very last question is about the fact that it is a large proportion of the funding available to us, and we ain't got much else. Are we allowed to take the inevitable, I think if projects last for more than a couple of years, we may well be into redundancy costs when they change or move, and are we allowed to take that out of the funding that's given to us, or do we have to bear it from our National Park grant?
You might not know the answer to that one. Do you know the answer to that one?
Well, I've costed it in, so it's part
Great.
of our...
Good.
I remember what I was going to say earlier about, the FIPL officers aren't just on their own, they are supported by other staff. So they quite often go out with other staff who have particular expertise. So it is, FIPL does support, it's supported by quite a number of people.
Great. Thank you. Right, I'm going to move to the vote now. So we've been asked to welcome the additional funding, which I'm sure we all do. Agree to the amendment from the 5,000 to 10,000 before it has to go in front of members. And we are already on item 8 going to be looking at the member that we need to replace. So I'm going to leave that one to item 8 because it's tidier in the minutes, if that's okay. So it's the other two that we need to deal with. Can I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Dr. Kelly. And a seconder? Thank you, Dominic. All those in favour? Thank you. Alex, can I thank you for all the hard work? Can you give our thanks to the team? Thank you. So moving on nicely now to item 7, and change over here because Claire's going to take us through the organisational development strategy 23 to 26.
Morning, members. Thank you very much. So yes, I'm here to present to you and seek your approval of our organisational development strategy. As we all know, any organisation's greatest asset is its staff, and that's very much the case here as well. And although we only have a small staff complement, I think they achieve an awful lot. So this strategy is basically setting out how we're looking to support and enable the work that the staff does, supported by you, our members, and obviously you sort of set the tone and lead that kind of cultural recommendation in terms of how we operate. So it's a little bit overdue, this strategy. Our latest one sort of finished in 2020, but for obvious reasons with the pandemic and other things that have happened since, it's taken us a little longer than we hoped to bring this new one. But because we just recently members approved the 3-year corporate strategy, it fits very well within that and is seen very much as linked to delivering one of the priorities in that strategy about the authority being a great place to live. The work that we've done to feed into it has included a lot of engagement with our staff, so we've had various staff surveys and also ran some workshops facilitated by an independent person to sort of explore some of the themes coming out of the survey in a bit more detail, and the recommendations from that have fed into this strategy and been discussed at the leadership team. And we've also drawn on sort of feedback that we've got through appraisals and so on. So the sort of the nub of the strategy really is the 4 aims that are set out there, and the appendix kind of gives an outline of the actions that we're taking and a bit of a progress report, really, because this work is always ongoing, so it gives you an indication of what's been happening and what we're still planning to do. We will be keeping this obviously under review, seeing how we're how we're going and sort of doing some, reporting so that we know that we're on track in achieving what's set out in the strategy. So I should also just acknowledge that the great vast bulk of this work is being done by Ellie Woodcock, our HR advisor, who is on leave today, which is why she's not here. Otherwise, she'd be with me to present it to you. But big thanks really to Ellie for all the work that she does, for this and in actually implementing a lot of the actions that are in here. So that's what I was going to say, Chairman, in terms of introduction, and just recommend the paper to you, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Fran.
Thank you. This is very interesting. I just wanted to ask if you could enlarge a little bit on aim 2. One of the actions is to introduce regular remote working at other sites for leadership team to engage with off-site staff. So could you just explain a little bit more about that and why it's taking until 2024 to happen?
So that was recognising that we have other sort of places of work for staff. So the Exmoor Depot, Pinkery Outdoor Education Centre, the National Park Centres, one of the sort of feedbacks really was that it can seem a bit remote to those staff in terms of they come in occasionally to Exmoor House where most of us are based, but not as regularly getting that interaction with other staff and particularly leadership team. So it was felt that it would be helpful that as a leadership team we go out to the staff rather than expecting them to come here. And I know that I think for example Rob has already undertaken that in terms of going to the depot, and Dean in terms of the Pinkery Centre, but I think we felt we could do more along that line. So the reason that it's taking till 24, we're not going to wait until 24 to do it, but obviously it is a 3-year strategy, so it's something that we'll be trying to build up over the next year or so, and get that happening a little bit more regularly.
Can I just come back? It doesn't really need to be red then if you're already doing it. Surely that's amber if it's already happening.
Yes, I mean I think it's just to reflect that we feel that was happening anyway. So in terms of on top of what we're already doing, we haven't sort of identified and agreed yet exactly what we're going to do and how we'll do it and how regularly, etc. So that's why it's red. But I think it won't take very much to do that, and hopefully we can get that going fairly quickly.
Thank you. Mandy.
Thank you. Pleased to see this report, and for me the authority is its staff and the staff the authority. I think they're absolutely intertwined and we rely on all of them to do a great job, which they do. But just a couple of questions. Firstly, around explore additional avenues for staff to provide feedback, ideas or make suggestions via Microsoft 365. I love feedback from staff. They know the organisation better than anybody. And I've worked in several organisations where there is small remuneration. I'm thinking it might be a voucher, it might be a pen, it might be something. But if you can start that flow of regular ideas from people, I think that can really help any organisation. And if there's just a little something there, you can sometimes get a little bit of stuff going on that everybody wants the best idea, and they'll start that flow of ideas. And I think that's really good culturally, and welcome it. The other question was around review our performance policy and provide training. That's an amber, and it says the policy has been reviewed and it's been adopted. I'm just wondering, was there something else to follow on? Because again, it looks like that has been completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the suggestion, and we welcome any suggestions from members. We'll certainly take that back and feed that into the the thinking around feedback and how we continue to get that. On the performance, I think it's an amber because Ellie's planning some training with managers around that, and she's got a programme over the next few months of various training and sort of discussion opportunities with managers, and performance is one of them. So that's why it's amber rather than green, in that we're part way through it again, obviously.
Can I just pop back with a follow-up? Do we have regular sort of Q&As with your sort of
senior staff, because now with everything online, actually it doesn't matter where staff are. And I know certainly at the new unitary, the numbers of staff involved in those Q&As are probably 3, 4, 5 times what they ever were, because the access is there. And, you know, we have got a lot of remote staff, but most at some point will have sort of internet access of some kind. So I just wonder if more can be done that way so that it's equality for all in access terms.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so we do. We have a monthly staff kind of, you know, check-in with leadership team, and it's an opportunity for Sarah to update staff on, you know, what's going on, or other members of staff to talk about something, you know, exciting in terms of what they're doing, you know, and then ask any questions. We do that hybrid, so if people are in the office, you know, they can come in person, and if not, they join online. So that's one of the things that we've sort of instigated to try and, you know, improve that communication. Thank you.
Randy, it's actually on the last page of the appendix, at the top one. Introduce monthly updates to the Chief Executive and Leadership Team, where staff can ask questions and also share what they're doing. That's a green, which is always good.
Fabulous. Shows I should read more closely. Thank you, Chair.
Just for the record, and we are in a public meeting, to make sure people do realise that's already happening. Lee, you were next, and then Laura.
Thank you, Chair, and I think following on from Mandy, really pleased to see where it says provide clear guidance on the PDR. I presume that's personal development review or something like that on staff, which is great, which is brilliant. It gives a two-way voice from the staff to management, etc., etc. I just wonder, it's great that you're giving the staff an opportunity for a voice here. I really applaud that. I think it was fantastic, following again from what Mandy said. Does the park have, I can't see any mention here, I might have missed it, does the park have any opportunity or a whistleblowing policy, if you like, for colleagues to perhaps report scenarios they may feel needs to be raised, that perhaps they want to do it confidentially and privately to raise concerns? I just wonder, can't see any of that here, and whether the park has got a policy to that effect, Claire. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, we do have a policy. You know, we can reference it here, but, you know, obviously all our policies are available to staff via the SharePoint site, so, you know, it's there if needed, and Ellie's able to advise on that for staff as well.
So just for the benefit of the new members, because you realise you've done things in the past and it's not always obvious, it's usually me that asks all the questions about staff stuff, and particularly it was health and well-being that I tend to ask. So a few years ago it was decided that I would liaise with Ellie, and so I do meet with her to find out what the emerging issues are, if there are any, and if there's any emerging issues about ill health, welfare, concerns. So if you like, I'm the conduit between the members and staff, just so that somebody's got an eye on it without it all being discussed in public, in case it's a bit delicate for any individual. So that's that.
Thank you.
Laura.
Thank you. Really great to see the focus on this. It looks really good. I just wondered, in the process of creating it, whether the issue of fixed-term contracts came up, and the impact of that on motivation, health and well-being, the sort of work-life balance thing. Is that something that cropped up?
Not specifically, really. No. I mean, we do have a number of that, and seasonal staff as well. So they do form a sort of a reasonable sort of chunk of our staffing. But it hasn't really come out. I think individuals, as they come close to their end of their contract, it, you know, can obviously sort of weigh on their mind a bit, and, you know, be a bit of a worry in terms of what's happening next. So, you know, we sort of, not that it's not relevant to us. It's just, you know, it wasn't something that really sort of came out of this process. But you know, certainly, you know, in terms of supporting individuals through that, then, you know, we do help where we can in terms of either looking for other opportunities. I mean, I think Alex spoke about, you know, staff for people who, you know, have moved across into, you know, in terms of different projects and different opportunities that have arisen. You know, so we do try and do what we can to support staff, and I think, you know, we're really good in terms of our training as well. So there's a lot of, you know, support in terms of training for people to develop skills and things which will help them move on to other roles if there isn't a role here ongoing for them.
Great, thank you. And sorry, one more question for me. Coming from several jobs in the environment sector, there's often in these organisational strategies a commitment to diversifying the workforce. I'm not seeing that come through really strongly here. I just wondered where we were at with that, or if it's part of a different work stream. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's really, really important point. And yes, we are very aware of that. I mean, Ellie does an annual report each year as part of our AGM in terms of our staffing, and that kind of highlights where we are in terms of diversity. So we have been working with members on equality, diversity, and inclusion strategy, which is a wider strategy, but looking at our workforce as part of that. So I guess you can kind of do some cross-referencing here, but yeah, it's very much part of our thinking around all of this. Thank you.
Francis.
Yeah, two things. There's ongoing work, obviously, to continue to promote and build on our health and wellbeing work to ensure staff are supported in the workplace. There are various organisations. One of them, the one that I know, is Care First, which is a confidential practicing type. Do we have? I think we do, but just to make sure we do.
Yes, we have an employee assistance support, and we have Mindful Employer, so staff can access a confidential helpline 24/7, and that again that's publicised through our SharePoint.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
There was a second question, and it came up from work in a completely different field, that equality and diversity can also include things that we don't think about so much as in terms of different background. It came up through children's services, in fact, in actually looking at the equality and diversity in the population of the area. Now, I know we're a national park, I know we recruit nationally, but it is actually, it's something which has a local, could have a local focus as well, and I'm not quite sure how much we think of that.
I'm just checking that I understand what you're saying. So that there may be people from different socioeconomic backgrounds locally, and are we giving people the opportunities to work here? Yes. Okay. So you're right. I mean, our policies are that it's open to all, and that we want to give everybody the opportunity to work here. I think because of the breadth of the work and the services that we provide, some roles are definitely roles that can only be undertaken locally, so it does support local employment, both at the depot, for example, or here at Exmoor House. I think the only thing I guess I can sort of point to is that with well, we're calling it an equality, diversity and inclusion strategy, but we've also had a debate about actually whether it should be equity rather than equality, which is about taking that extra step to be more proactive in trying to address some of those issues rather than just giving equality of opportunity, because not everybody has equality of opportunity. So we've sort of recognised it in the strategy, and I guess there's some further thinking to do in terms of what that actually means for us, and whether there are other things that we can do in terms of our workforce planning and recruitment to support that. So we do advertise locally and all of those usual things. So I think it's sort of something we're mindful of, but I can't think of anything sort of specific at the moment to say that we're doing other than those examples I've just highlighted. Okay.
No more hands. Oh, Robin, I forgot about you. Sorry.
No, quite briefly. Yeah, thanks for this, Claire. And I think from my point of view, really great to see this. Really important to see that reporting on where we are and the understanding of the issues that are out there. I think from my point of view, it's becoming even more important as time goes on because of the constraints, stresses, and the more and more diverse requirements being placed on the authority, and especially with the financial constraints that we've got and the need to look so carefully at how and what we can deliver as a national park. So really delighted to see this. I think from my point of view, the stresses and strains on staff must be quite incredible at times, really, looking at what they're expected to do, especially in a very small workforce here. There isn't capacity for people to disappear and that workload to be taken up because we don't have that spare capacity. You know, and even starting from the person who's responsible for this, we have a single person here looking at doing all this, and you know, I'd just like to record thanks to her for what she does in the background. I think it's supremely important. I'd like to move the recommendation.
Thank you. I'm just going to add to it that we also want to thank Ellie, especially if she's not here, so we can't thank her in person, so I'd like that in a minute. Can I have a seconder, please? Jeremy, thank you. That was Jeremy Horton. All those in favour? Thank you. Right, moving on to the highlight of the year, the annual appointment item. So for new members, I really do not like doing this. I would really be grateful if we can get it done as quickly as possible. Can you focus your mind? Some years it's been horrendous. That's all I can say.
Mostly we do it without voting by agreement.
Yes, that's where we really want to go, if we can. I don't want to sort of dictate to you, but it can get a bit dire, to say the least. And it's a nice day, and we've all got lives and all that sort of stuff. Right, starting from the beginning.
Chairman, would you like me to run through where we are? Because there's a few updates from
Very
when
briefly.
So all I'm going to do is I'll go through the table, just because the version that was issued to members, there's been a few updates with some late expressions of interest and a few members who have agreed to step down or step into various meetings, various groups. So to sort of keep this as short and as efficient as possible, I would just run through each group and highlight where there's some changes. So the first one that I wanted to highlight is the second one on your list, which is the Learning and Engagement Network, where we had a vacancy, but Laura Williams has expressed an interest, so if members are happy, then we can move on from that one. The second
what I'm
one...
going to do is,
Yep.
if anybody says no,
Yeah.
they need to shout out,
Okay.
because otherwise we'll end up voting on
Go
the whole
quickly.
thing for ages.
Go
So
quickly.
you've all got
Okay.
to catch my eye.
Secondly is the Moorland and Farming Board, where again we had a vacancy, but Jeremy Yardley has put his name forward, so we're happy to move forward with 4 members there. Okay, thirdly, this is one we may need to vote on, is that we have the Woodland and Forestry Advisory Group, where we have 2 places and 3 members who have expressed an interest, so that's Jeremy Holton, Nick Thwaites and Jeremy Yabsley.
Can I put my hand up there and say, we never have voted on these, we have always done them by agreement. The only things we have ever voted on are chairman and vice chairman. And if we can, it's rather than that we may need to have a vote, let's try to carry on doing it by discussion between us.
Yeah.
I'm very happy if any of those members want to step down.
One of you step down, please. Excellent. Well done, Jeremy. Well wanted.
So we have the FIPL. Sorry, members. We have the FIPL assessment panel, which Alex highlighted earlier. We had a vacancy. Jeremy Holton has expressed an interest. That's right, Jeremy, isn't it? So again, members are happy. Especially as you've just stepped down from one, we can.
His reward.
Pardon?
His reward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll find him a biscuit later as well.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on then, the Rural Enterprise Exmoor Group. Again, we had a vacancy. We needed a Devon member, and Andrea has indicated that she's happy.
But if another Devon member wants to do it, it's only you. Well, there's several of us here. If anybody wants to do it, I'm quite happy to step down. Do we need a local authority member? Oh, yeah, local authority. Jeremy, you're the only other local authority member here. You happy for me to do it? Okay.
Yeah, so Andrea, you're doing it, right? Okay. External funding. Yes. Where am I? Sorry. I'm sorry, I jumped one there. I just wanted to indicate in terms of the external funding working group. We did have more members than places, but Laura has.
I'm quite happy to step down from that. There's loads there. So
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. All right. Laura has, I think we would be, you know, interested in having you involved just because of your other role around the National Parks Partnership. So we can bring you in as required on that, Laura. Thank you. All right. So we've done FIPL. We've done Rural Enterprise, Exmoor. The campaign for national parks, again, we had more members than representation, but that's been sorted in that Laura's happy to stand down. So Dominic is representative. So the final one where we have, again, a vacancy is the Landscape Advisory Panel, where we have 2 places, and Mike Kelly has indicated an interest, but is there anyone else who would like to take up that vacancy? Otherwise, we will carry a vacancy until somebody does wish to take it up.
Well, it'd be quite nice to have somebody from Somerset. There's a number of you here. Well done. Well volunteered, Marcus. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that you want, isn't it?
Thank you. So that, I think, deals with the appointments. I would just like to draw members' attention to the report and the fact that we're seeking to do a report of these groups. It's sort of, we used to do it, it's fallen by the wayside a bit, so I think it would be really good practice just in terms of you know, openness and transparency. So those members who are on those groups, we will be asking you just to do something very short in terms of you know, what's gone on during the year. It doesn't mean though that, you know, we have to wait until the end of the year to do that. So I think again, if there are important things that are being discussed or issues that are coming up through those groups and some feedback that you think it would be helpful to make to the rest of the authority members, then please do that. Let us know. We can do it informally via members forum, or, you know, more formally if needed. So I just highlight that, you know, again, the value of being on these groups is that, you know, we can show take the authority's interests out to partners, but also bring it back here and share it with others in terms of, you know, how things are going.
Stephen.
Don't want to upset your morning, Madam Chairman, but I just wondered about the rural housing network, because it says that it's up to 5 authority members, but there are 6 expressions of interest.
So I think we've had one member step down because I've got 5 on my list. I just need to check who that is. But 5 that I've got is Mike Ellicott, Bill Gein, Jeremy Holton, Francis Nicholson and Stephen Pugsley. Sorry if I didn't pick that one up before. But is that somebody? Was that Lee? That was Lee. That was Lee, thank you. Yes. Yeah. I think what's happened is that members have sort of expressed interest in lots of things, but only really want to be on 1 or 2. So,
for that relief, much thanks.
Thank you very much. Sorry not to have highlighted that.
Thank you.
No, I had a conversation with Judy in the week, didn't I? So we cleared a few things up. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, so Evelyn's on Visit Exmoor because, no, sorry, Evelyn stood down and Laura is going to be the Visit Exmoor representative. Yeah.
Well sorted out. Like
sorry, this was all changing at the last moment, which is why it's a little bit ragged.
Speak, but before I let him speak, I love this. I need to apologise because I said there was only one other Devon local authority member in the room when you're sat next to me. I am so sorry. Do you want to do it?
I didn't need, no thank you. I've got more than enough to do at the moment. I'd just like to move the recommendation.
Oh, brilliant. Can I have a seconder, please? Mandy, well done. All in favour? Thank you. Right, the next item should be lovely and swift, and that was brilliant. Thank you, members. I'm hugely grateful that we got through that quite quickly. Item 9 is authority meeting schedule. Claire.
Thank you. Yes, I don't think I need to say much other than it's all in the paper there, other than, you know, this is the schedule for next year. So as we've been discussing, we've moved to just booking the 1 day a month for members in terms of the Exmoor Tuesday. We'll look to try and get all the business done that we can on that Tuesday, so that will include the formal business of authority and planning, but also any other you know, things that we need to do around meetings other than our statutory meetings, which are in the list. We haven't included the Parish and Consultative Forum just because of the discussions that are ongoing around that at the moment. Once that's been sorted and agreed, we'll come back to you with the dates for those meetings. Thank you.
Mandy?
Yeah, just a quick question. We've had a paper recently that looked at meetings and frequency of meetings. That work's still ongoing, so I'm presuming this can be changed if anything rolled out of that work.
We've done it on the basis that those are the meeting dates that we would wish members to attend for. If we don't need, for example, if we make any changes on the basis of those discussions around governance, then it wouldn't be a formal meeting, but we still may want to have that date in the diaries to do training or other informal meetings. So I think for the purposes of members, you know, so we've always, you know, had feedback from you that it's important that you've got the dates in your diaries. That's why we've sort of kept it to the Exmoor Tuesday, basically.
Yeah, just to say, I wouldn't want to preempt that work, so it's just having clarity. If we did want to reduce the numbers, possibly, because we're looking at savings and budgets, that still could be done. So I'd just like that it has the reassurance that there is flexibility there, should changes need to be made.
So should we do that, then I can do that. But the important thing is, for many of us, I'm sure everybody in the room, that we know that Exmoor Tuesday is in our diary. Because I don't know about you, but somebody will soon put something else in there. There's a blank. Yeah. Nature her bores the boys, doesn't it, or something? A vacuum. Yeah. So best we've got them in, but yes, we don't actually have to have those meetings. Okay. Right. Are we all happy with that?
Yeah.
I've got to say the comment at the bottom of item 9, appendix 1, page 1 doesn't make any sense, but we all know what it was meant. Well done. Seconder, Jeremy? Yeah. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. It's quite amusing you sitting next to each other rather than being a payment. Item 10 is a personnel update. So we've got 4 starters. Vicky, Alistair, Felix and Ben. Ben used to work here, so many of us know him. And we said goodbye to Gordon before his departure there. I understand he's getting on quite well over at Torridge. Item 11, I have no other items that I've been advised of urgency, so therefore I'd like to close the meeting.